Repeating, a sniper with a high-powered rifle has taken up a position on the observation deck.
On August 1st, 1966, 25-year-old Charles Whitman climbed to the top of the University of Texas Tower and in just 96 minutes shot 45 people before two Austin police officers brought him down. The night before ascending the tower, Whitman brutally murdered his wife and his mother. In doing so, Whitman committed what was then the largest mass murder in American history.
Charles Whitman was the first in a number of ways. He was the first person to take his guns and go to school.
The final tally was grim. In less than 24 hours, Charles Whitman caused the deaths of 17 people and horrifically wounded 31 others. The mass killing spree left an indelible mark on the state's flagship university and the residents of its capital city. In an age before Columbine, before Oklahoma City, before 9/11, Charles Whitman was America's first domestic terrorist. Charles Joseph Whitman was described by many as the all-American boy. Growing up in Lake Worth, Florida, he became an accomplished piano player. At the age of 12 years and 3 months, the youngest Eagle Scout in the world. He was also a crack shot with many of the rifles that filled the Whitman home. His accomplishments, however, came at a cost. Charles Whitman's father, C.A. Whitman, was a stern disciplinarian and frequently beat his wife and children for the smallest transgressions. After a night of drinking on his 18th birthday, Charles was beaten and thrown into the family pool by his outraged father. The next morning, Charles Whitman joined the Marine Corps. Used to tough discipline and familiar with firearms, Charles excelled on the rifle range and achieved the rating of sharpshooter. Soon, his superiors recommended the young Marine for an engineering scholarship, and in the fall of 1961, Charles Whitman was admitted to the University of Texas. Once enrolled, Charles met the woman who would become the love of his life. Kathleen Leisner entered the University of Texas as a beautiful young woman from South Texas. Their courtship was quick, and on August 17, 1962, the two young lovers were married in Kathy's hometown church in Needville, Texas. Once back in Austin, Charlie quickly fell into academic trouble, lost his scholarship, and returned to the enlisted ranks of the Marines. His second experience was nothing like his first. Missing his wife and eager to return to Austin, Charlie fell into trouble, spent time locked up in the brig, and as soon as his enlistment was up, returned to Texas and re-enrolled in the university as an architectural engineering student. Eager to finish, Charles took a heavy load of courses, but soon complained of headaches and had trouble concentrating on his studies. As a freshman in 1961, Whitman had remarked to friends that the university's main building, the tower, was a perfect fortress in which one man could hold off an army. In the summer of 1966, Charles Whitman's thoughts returned to the tower and its potential as the perfect sniper's nest.
Charles Whitman was leading a very stressful and tormented life. It developed into anger. The incident that probably brought about his final decision to die, but to take a lot of people with him before he did it, was when his mother and father separated in February or March of 1966.
In the final days of July 1966, Whitman, experiencing frequent headaches and convinced he would be unable to achieve success, made up his mind to die. His death, he decided, would be as spectacular as possible, a death in which his father would be humiliated in front of the nation. Accordingly, on the night of July 31st, Whitman began preparations for a one-man massacre. After dropping off his wife, Catherine, for her shift at the Southwestern Bell Telephone Exchange, Whitman returned to his house in South Austin and began to type out a letter.
It was after much thought that I decided to kill my wife, Kathy, tonight, after I pick her up from work at the telephone company. I love her dearly, and she has been as fine a wife to me as any man could ever hope to have. I truly do not consider this world worth living in, and am prepared to die, and I do not want to leave her to suffer alone in it. I intend to kill her as painlessly as possible.
After hiding the letter out of sight, Whitman picked up his wife, dropped her off at home, and drove to his mother's apartment building at 13th and Guadalupe. Entering penthouse apartment 505 a few minutes after midnight, Whitman quickly turned to the business at hand. Based on the timeline established by the night watchman's records, it appears Whitman attacked his mother, Margaret Whitman, as soon as she shut the door. Although the exact details can never be known, it is surmised that Whitman first strangled his mother with a 5-foot piece of rubber hose, then crushed the back of her skull with a heavy object and smashed the wedding and engagement rings on her left hand. Finally, he stabbed her in the heart with a large hunting knife. In a macabre reversal of roles, Whitman then tucked his mother into bed. As he had done earlier in the evening, Whitman sat down to leave an explanation for his crime.
To whom it may concern, I have just taken my mother's life. I am very upset over having done it. However, I feel that if there is a heaven, she is definitely there now. The intense hatred I feel for my father is beyond description.
Before returning home, Whitman left a note taped to the front door of the apartment to forestall anyone from checking on his mother. Returning to his small home on Jewell Street, Whitman took out the large hunting knife, entered the front bedroom, and quickly stabbed his sleeping wife through the heart. It is doubtful and perhaps merciful that Catherine Whitman never knew what happened. Returning to his typed note, Whitman then added in longhand,
8/1/66, Monday, 3 a.m., both dead.
When the sun rose, Whitman drove to the Sears department store in Hancock Center, where he purchased a 12-gauge Sears shotgun on credit. Returning home, he sawed off both the stock and barrel. Working quickly now and methodically, Whitman packed his Marine Corps footlocker with everything he would need for a long siege. After his death, the Austin Police Department listed the contents, including a Remington 6mm bolt-action rifle, an N1 carbine, a .35 caliber Remington pump rifle, the sawed-off Sears 12-gauge shotgun, a 9mm Luger pistol, a Galisi Brescia pistol, and a .357 Smith & Wesson Magnum revolver. Also included an AM/FM radio, a 3.5-gallon jug of water, a 3.5-gallon jug of gasoline, flashlight batteries, several lengths of rope, a compass, a ballpoint pen, a hatchet, a hammer, a cigarette lighter, a canteen full of water, a hunting knife, a pocket knife, a 10-inch pipe wrench, eyeglasses and case, kitchen matches, binoculars, charcoal starter, an army duffel bag, a flashlight, earplugs, tape, gloves, a deer bag, bread and sweet rolls, 12 assorted cans of food, a jar of honey, a roll of toilet paper, and over 700 rounds of ammunition. Charles Whitman was prepared to stay atop the tower for several days. Whitman dressed in light blue working man's coveralls and lashed his footlocker to a rented dolly. At 11 a.m., with the temperature 90 degrees and climbing, Charles Whitman climbed into his car and drove to the Texas Tower. Before leaving, he stopped to write one final note for the police.
At the Whitman home, Lieutenant Merle Wells talked with newsmen about the discovery and about a note the man had written.
In this letter, he said that he was going to kill his wife and mother to save them the embarrassment of what he was about to do. That the reason for him killing them is that he has been having severe headaches and has been to a psychiatrist. And
he said that about himself?
Yes. No, I don't.
What is the condition of the house right now?
It's very neat and clean, and it's not anything out of order. She's lying in bed on her back. She has 3 stab wounds instead of 2, as we thought at first. And we think that they were caused by that large hunting knife that was with the stuff up at the tower.
Arriving at the tower, Whitman parked at the base of the building, rolled his dolly into elevator number 2, and began the 30-second ride to the 27th floor. After exiting the elevator, Whitman slowly manhandled his footlocker up 2 flights of stairs until he reached the 28th floor and the entrance to the observation deck. The first to die was 47-year-old receptionist Edna Townsley. From police photographs, it is believed that Whitman struck Townsley in the back of the head near her desk and then dragged the dying woman across the floor and deposited her body behind a small beige sofa on the room's east side. A young couple, Cheryl Bont and Don Walden, were outside on the observation deck.
We decided to go on in and not stay to hear the chimes. So as we walked into the reception area, the first thing I noticed was that the receptionist was not at her desk, but it was almost noon, so I rationalized she was probably already gone to lunch. And then in front of us was a reddish-brown stain all the way across the floor that had not been there when we came up. And the only thing I could think of was varnish. It looked like the color of varnish, and I thought, well, maybe they were going to varnish the floor. I pointed it out to Don so that we could step over it. And as we're getting ready to step over it, we heard something, and there was a movement to the right, and as we looked to the right, Whitman was there, and he turned around and faced us and had a rifle in each hand. And as he turned around, I smiled and spoke to him, and he said hello to me as well. And again, we didn't stop and carry on a conversation, didn't ask what he was doing or anything. We just kept walking. Don told me later he wondered if he was going to go out to shoot pigeons, but he didn't ask him that, and probably that was a very good thing. I think what saved us is we didn't stop walking through the room, we didn't stop talking, we didn't stop and ask him what he was doing, we did not impede what he had in mind, we did not question him. We simply interrupted him for about 15 seconds. While we were going down one elevator, the Gabor family from Texarkana was going up the other elevator because they were right behind us. He was still in the reception room, had not yet gone out on the observation deck, and they tried to go up that staircase that we had just gone down. And he shot 4 of the 5 members of that family. So, I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't have shot us, except that we caught him off guard. He wasn't ready.
In the days following, Austin Police Chief Bob Miles would remark that the two were the luckiest people in Austin. Moments later, 2 families on vacation, the Lamports and the Gabors, were ambushed in the stairwell leading to the 28th floor. Within moments, Marguerite Lamport and her 16-year-old nephew, Mark Gabor, were dead, killed by at least 3 blasts from Whitman's sawed-off shotgun. The attack also critically injured 19-year-old Michael Gabor and his mother, Mary. The staircase now awash in blood. The bodies of the living and the dead tumbled down the stairs, where they would languish for nearly 2 hours. 6 years later, the terribly injured Mary Gabor would publish her account of the family's tragic encounter with Charles Whitman in an autobiography entitled The Impossible Tree. With the landing secure, Charles Whitman wrapped a white headband around his forehead, walked out through the glass-paneled door and into the searing Texas heat. Opening his footlocker, he removed the 6mm Remington, leaned over the southern edge of the wall, and took careful aim at the innocent souls below. The first to be shot was 18-year-old Claire Wilson. She was 8 months pregnant and was strolling across the mall with her boyfriend and father of her child, Thomas Frederick Ekman. Whitman's first shot pierced Claire's womb and shattered the skull of her unborn baby boy. As she fell to the pavement, her boyfriend reached for her and was shot in the upper back. He was killed instantly.